Hey again, really good to be with you. Really glad you're here. Just before we kind of jump into this new series, I don't know who this is for. I don't know the somebody or the somebodies that you need to hear this today. Just this inescapable reality that the God who created you and the God who is the God of breakthrough is very literally today in this moment on your side. And for some of you, that maybe that just means you almost need the picture, and God would just love to paint the picture for you this morning, that he's so on your side that he's actually kind of right out in front of you, and he's pushing back on everything that you feel like just in an unrelenting fashion is pushing in on you. He's pushing it back, or he's so on your side that he's turned, even this morning, he's so close, he's turned your direction, and he's literally peeling things off of your life that are weighty and burdensome and toxic and broken. He's so like on your side that he's arm around you, like encouraging you forward, maybe right behind you, nudging you, like just a little gentle nudge forward with all of this belief and all of this hope. And I don't know what you're in, and I don't know why somebody or somebodies need to just capture that this morning, but it just felt like we just had to let that have some room to breathe. The God of breakthrough this morning, right in this moment, in this room, or wherever you're joining from online, he is on your side. He is for you. He's not just good in theory out there somewhere. He's on your side. And so maybe the best thing you'll say to yourself today is, wait, that's me. The God of breakthrough's on my side. He's going to fight off this shame. He's going to fight off this guilt. He's going to fight off this addiction. He's going to fight off whatever that is. The God of breakthrough is on your side. So for somebody, that's the only reason you were here today, that 60 seconds. Don't leave, but that was the only reason that you were here today, or that you joined online, but stay engaged here for a little bit. So as we start this series, Normal, I want to do something this morning that for a lot of you will not feel normal in church, okay? It'll feel like, some of you have already been uncomfortable by this reality this morning, and I get it and I understand, but what I need you to have in your hand is a poker chip, okay? And again, some of you are really, I know you're just unnerved by that. If you didn't get a poker chip when you came in today, will you just slip up your hand a little bit? We want to get you one of those. And so if you're an extrovert, I know you want to get up and go get the chip. We're going to find you. Just raise your hand. If you're an introvert, if you can get it this far, we'll find you. I know it's tough. If I was in your spot, I'm the introvert, I would be sitting on my hands. I'll just go without a chip. I'll just go without a chip. So, but you need a chip. Everybody once in their life needs to hold a poker chip in church, okay? So it needs to happen. So, okay, are we good? Everybody good? Did you get one? You had a hand up over here. You good? Okay, hand up. Okay, good. Do you have one? Okay, I'm just making sure. Now I'm calling people out. Okay, just want to make sure. If you're joining from home today or wherever you're at, just grab anything that, you might have poker chips. Get a poker chip, or get a coaster or a piece of paper, a cup, anything you just kind of have in your hand. And we'll kind of use this a little bit as we go today. Again, you might set it down next to you because you're going to sketch some notes or whatever it is, and that's great. And while you're getting that and you're settling that, or maybe at home, you're grabbing one of those, I just want to give you one more reminder too of the Explore Your Calling experience we're doing in a couple weekends. So it's on March 26th, Saturday. It's about 3.5 hours, and we're just going to do a big experiment together and explore our calling. Would love to have you come be a part of that. This is one of those things we really do need to know, who's coming. And so if you can RSVP for that one, right on the homepage of our website, just go to thejchurch.com and you can RSVP right there. Whether you've been following Jesus for an hour, whether you're not yet following Jesus yet, whether you've been following Jesus for 100 years, but you're like, hey, I kind of want to refine or explore or figure it out. This is for you, and we'll learn this thing together. So again, that's coming up quickly. So here's this reality with normal. Lots of things in the world, we talked about this a lot, but lots of the things in the world right now, we're all operating out of different definitions. You can have a conversation with somebody and you can be using all the same words and meaning completely different things. We're just operating out of millions of dictionaries right now. And we've always done that with things like normal, though, right? What's normal to you, you know that on some level isn't necessarily normal to everybody else, okay? I mean, for instance, if you're of driving age, you have a normal way of driving, okay? And that's beautiful and that's fine and that's great and keep your normal way of driving. But you know what all the rest of us know, right? Is that everybody that drives slower than you is a moron and faster than you is an idiot, right? It's like, well, that's an idiot. Well, where do they think they're going? What are they doing? Come on, Maura, pick it up, right? But that's normal to them, and you have the normal way you drive, and it's like that's two different normals, and in that case, one's maybe not right or wrong. I mean, I know your way's right, but I mean, no, not right or wrong, okay? You have a normal pattern and rhythm in which you eat. You know, some of you are like breakfast people first thing in the morning. Some of you are like Mountain Dew people. Like as soon as you get up, it's like by the bed and you go to bed. I don't even know how that works. Some of you are like coffee before you can function, right? And that's normal to you. And for other people, it's something different is normal. Or you've got a certain time that you eat dinner, or you've really valued doing dinner in a certain way or a certain rhythm, and that's normal to you. And somebody else has got a different kind of normal. And that's fine too, right? But here's the reality about just humanity in general is that all throughout the story of God and humanity, there are differing normals. There are significant contrast in normals. There are all sorts of normals that God created and God instituted, and all of them were like perfect and life-giving and whole. And then this very broken, ugly thing of sin entered the world through people like you and me, and all of a sudden there became a new normal. Now there were contrasting normals, contradictory normals, both very common, but both very different. And we still live in that tension of, what's normal and what's not. And here's the thing. Part of what we're going to navigate in this series is this understanding that most of us, all of us probably, we live in some normal rhythms, some normal systems, some normal ways of functioning in life that we're not even aware we live with or that we live in. And they might be very opposite or very different of the normal God actually created. So we're just gonna say, look, where in our life is normal the normal I want, and where do I need to redefine normal? Where do I need to redefine what is normal to my life? In order to do it, we're going to just walk through one passage of the scripture over the next several weeks. It's one chapter in the New Testament of your Bible, Romans chapter 12. So Romans is a little bit into the New Testament in your Bible, Romans chapter 12. So if you're going to unlock a device, you'll scroll there. You'll get Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, and then Romans in the New Testament of your Bible. Or if you're going to use a bound copy or whatever, that's great. And we're just going to live in this chapter for the next several weeks. We're going to live here, kind of just move our way through it. And so it's a great series. You'll underline, circle some things, jot some notes, or type them into your phone, whatever it is that you're using. And here's the deal with Romans. Like a guy named Paul wrote it, who we talk about a lot because he wrote a lot of what we have as the New Testament. And Paul wrote it to a group of people who they really are, a lot of them are Jesus followers, but not all of them. And they are living in Rome, in the center of Rome's activity and Rome's budding empire, right? They're in the middle of this, okay? And they're trying to figure out, like, whoa. So in the middle of all of this advancement, in the middle of all of this power, in the middle of all this entertainment, in the middle, what, who is God and where is God? And what would it look like for me to live with this person of Jesus? And so Paul starts by saying, look, I mean, first, God's the God of creation. Like God created things, and you anywhere in the world that you go, there's God. Like you can't deny God's existence, and you look and you see him everywhere. And he talks about the power of the gospel and the person of Jesus to save, and how he just doesn't have any shame in that. There's no embarrassment in Paul in being a follower of Jesus. He talks about how Jesus makes us right through the giving of his own life for us and his own resurrection, and how he both makes us right with God and then gives us his spirit so that we could live the same life. Like that's one of the most audacious, bold claims that Paul makes in Romans and other places, right? That you and I have the same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead, which means we have the same ability to live a new life that Jesus did. That's an incredible thing. And it's all throughout this thing called the New Testament of your Bible. And so Paul starts playing all of those things out, and he's covered all of that when he gets to Romans chapter 12. So today we're just going to look at one verse, okay? Just one verse, Romans chapter 12. And some of you have memorized this over time, or you've been back in this passage a little bit. Here's what it says, Romans chapter 12. First says, therefore, we just covered a lot of those things, right? I urge you, brothers and sisters, come on, family of people, in view of God's mercy, I want to urge you, I want to compel you, I want to implore you. I'm just waving as hard as I can. I want to challenge you to offer your bodies as living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This actually is what your true and your proper worship would be. We've got a lot of ideas about what worship is. Paul's defining one. A lot of you think that we just engaged in worship when we sang. That is a really small slice of it. I mean, it's a microcosm of it. Significant, but small. But Paul's playing out a much bigger thing. So he starts with therefore. Starts with this therefore. And it's the fourth time Paul uses therefore in the letter. And so what he's done is, again, he's talked about, look, therefore, from what I've taught you before, like I've taught you, God's big. God's the God of all of creation, and yet God's close enough to save you. Therefore, in view of that, in view of how big God is and how close God is, and therefore, in light of this fact that God would actually justify you through his son, like, hey, he's playing these things out. He says, therefore, in view of this mercy, see, here's the thing. There's not a lot that makes sense with God until you take a really good look at God. There's just not a lot that makes sense with God unless you take a good look at God. So Paul's like, look, if you want to understand how this thing works or why we would do it, let's just start by looking at God's mercy. Like, recount your sin if you need to, recount lost opportunities if you need to, but then look at his mercy. Look how big God is in his creation, and then how personal he is in his mercy. Look at how big God is in his expression of the power of his creativity, and how intimate he is in his mercy. In view of God's mercy to you, in view of God's mercy to you. So everything that we're going to read in the rest of this chapter, and really in the rest of the letter, is out of this, like, in view of God's mercy. So even today, let yourself be acquainted or reacquainted with God's mercy, God's kindness to you, God not giving you everything that you deserve, and in fact being gracious and giving you things that you don't deserve. That's who God is to us. That's who he is. Paul says, in light of that, I want to invite you to offer your bodies. And he talks about bodies because he's really talking about your whole life. Your body is like this shell, right, that houses your soul and your spirit. So Paul's saying, like everything you can imagine about yourself, what you think, what you feel, what you want to do, your motivations, your dreams, your aspirations, your insecurities, your doubts, all of that, just all of it. And then he says this is fascinating, right? And then he says, this is your, like, true and proper worship. Your true and your proper worship. Now, for the cerebral among us, for those of you who are thinkers and you like to analyze things and you want to make decisions from your head first, man, that's a beautiful thing. For those of you who like love Excel charts and you're just all in on that, right? Listen, this is one of the best passages in the whole Bible for you. Because look, what true and proper really means, like, if we could just pull that back and start peeling layers off of Paul's original writing, you know what he wrote? This is actually your true and proper worship. That's actually your reasonable and logical act of worship. That's your reasonable and logical act. The most reasonable thing you would do as an act of worship is offer your whole life to God in view of his mercy. The most logical thing you would do. Right? I mean, now come on, somebody. That's for some of you, that's really good news, right? Because all you've heard is a faith that's based on feeling. All you've heard is a following Jesus that's based on a feeling and emotion, and you're not really sure what to do with that because you don't feel very emotive. Well, you're welcome to the party, right? Because here's Paul, like, hey, you want to know what your reasonable and logical thing would be? look at God's mercy. Look at the vastness of God's creation and the intimacy and closeness of his mercy, and the most logical thing you'll do is offer your life to him. That's what you do. You'd offer your body. But what does this thing of offer really mean? I mean, that sounds neat, right? So if we could make it like if Paul's like, be logical, okay, well, be logical, what is that actually? Like, okay, how am I being logical? Because if I'm really gonna worship, if this is my reasonable act of worship, so like singing isn't my reasonable act of worship, it's only a part of it. It's like a super small part of it. It's a valuable part of it. It's a gift. We're implored over and over in the scriptures to engage. It is part of how we honor God and connect with him. But again, Paul's talking about this whole thing here, right? So he uses this word offer, which really is just like when we offer something, when we offer our bodies, our whole self to God, it's really just this act of surrender. It's to surrender. It's to give to something. It's to give ourselves. It's to give ourselves away. It's to submit ourselves. It's to yield. It's to like take our hands off and say, oh, okay, like God's got this. So it needs just to offer. Let's talk about poker chips, okay? So when I was in high school, I had a little bit of a gambling problem for a while. It's why I will never gamble again. It's why I will never go in a casino or anything like that. Just I put friendships at risk and created family challenges and everything else with that. I'm like, okay, we're not doing this. But poker chips are just a really good analogy today, so work with me, okay? Okay, we're in it. So here's the thing. We have this life, and your life has all of these different pieces and parts to it. Your life's got all sorts of pieces. You got groups of chips in your life that they represent your family, and they come with a certain weight, and they represent like a group of friendships. Like this is my friend group, and I got this other little group over here, and they're a little like second ring of friends, but they're friends too. And all of those have a different weight, and you've got some kind of school dynamic, and there's pressure in that, and yet that also intersects with this friend group dynamic. And then you've got parent expectation, right? Or you're in college, and you're trying to figure out how to pay, or you know all those kind of things. You've got all that pressure on school and extracurricular things, and you've got a job, or right, you go to work someplace, and there's all sorts of weight that come with that, right? I mean, the job thing's huge. It's where we end up spending a majority of our waking hours, and so that's big. We got this like church thing we do, or Jesus, or maybe we're exploring Jesus, or whatever that is, and that just feels like it has to have weight, right? I mean, we're talking about the Bible, and I know we're using poker chips, but I guess it's still spiritual, right? So that's got to count, okay? And so we're all in on this thing of like, okay, I have all these parts of my life. But there are two normals here. There are two normal ways of handling the parts of our life. There are two normal ways of distributing, of considering, of emphasizing the parts of our life. There's a normal way, which Paul will use this phrase in the next verse, which we'll talk about a little bit next week. There's a normal way of the world, or there's a system. It's just a way that the world functions. We all live in the same world, and there's a way the world functions. There's a way the world makes decisions. There's a way the world processes. There's a way the world responds, right? There is a normal way. And here's the normal way we handle our lives in the system or the pattern, just the normal world in which we live. Even those of us who are followers of Jesus, or if you're here exploring Jesus today, or you're tuned and you're wondering, like, what would it be like? I mean, we'll start to see some of the difference here. What's largely normal is to take certain parts of our life and make a determination about what they are. So if this is my life and this life represents my friends, you know, regardless of what season of life, if this is my friend group or our family's friend group or whatever, okay, now wait a second, that's my friends and I do social things with them and maybe even vacation with them, or maybe I'm in group chats with them, or maybe whatever it is, these are my friend groups. Well, that's like part of my life. That's just part of my life. That's not like a spiritual thing or something. That's friends. These are real people. So that goes over here. And then I have this job, and And so my job is really important to me. It's a major part of my life. But again, I don't work at church. I don't, or anything like that. And so I got it over here. And now I have my job. It's over here. Now I pray about my job. I want God to work in my job. I do pray about that. I have decisions to make about my future, like where am I going to go to college, or where will I get a job, or when will I retire, or what will I do in my retirement. I have these decisions. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these. I'm going to decide, for instance, I'm going to decide where I'm going to go to college, or I'm going to help my kid decide where they're going to go to college. And then I'm going to pray about it. And then I'm going to beg other people to pray about it too, right? Because that's normal, okay? That's because we feel the pressure of that decision. I have some money, right? And because I got a job or because, I got an inheritance or whatever. I have some money. What do I actually do with the money? I think God wants to be engaged in it somehow. I'm not exactly sure. And I'm actually holding it, or I see it in my bank account like it's a physical, tangible thing. And so what we do is we start to just kind of weight things and categorize them. And we say, okay, but I've got this spiritual life, right? I have this, and I'm okay. I think I like Jesus. I think I love Jesus. I'm exploring Jesus. That's kind of spiritual. Like I go to church. Like I'm going to put that in a little Jesus category over here. I try and do some things in the church. So I'm going to do that. I donate. I do some donating. I give them my time to things like in nonprofits, and I'm trying to do good. So I'm going to count that as spiritual too, because I'm giving of myself. And if you knew how busy I was and I was going to give it of myself, you'd count it as spiritual too, right? And so we come up with these patterns, right, where we weight the components of our life. And look, listen, this is normal. This is normal. Some of you are playing ahead to where you think it goes, but you got to hold on for a second because you've done this. Me too. This week. Okay, we've done this. And Paul comes along and he says, hey, now wait a second. I know you're living in a place in which this is the normal pattern. In fact, I know you're living in a place where you can't even really be too outward about your whole Jesus thing. That comes with all sorts of risk. And so let's just go ahead and pull that back, because I know you're living in Rome in a time where they're tolerating you as Jesus followers, but that's coming to an end, and some of them have already been killed. And so let's not be overly aggressive with the fact that we would be a Jesus follower, okay? So what Paul comes along and says is, okay, I know, I get it, but in view of God's mercy and kindness and grace, which are all expressions of his love and the intensity of his passion for you, Paul says, what if we just offer our whole lives? What if we just offer our whole body, our entire spirit, our entire soul? So what if instead of compartmentalizing our chips and playing them out differently, what if we say, oh, wait a second, actually my job, that's actually a spiritual thing. Let me go ahead and lead with that, going to Jesus. I'm going to offer that. My friend group, okay, that's spiritual too. Some of them are anything but feeling very spiritual. Some of them are crazy, but it's my friend group. And so even that, if I want my whole life to be offered in view of God's mercy, if I trust him with my salvation, I'll go ahead and put that in the middle of the table too. Oh, my money, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, God owns everything. And now I'm not sure, so I'm going to put that one in. I am going to hold a couple of those back because that one's more precious to me. Okay, it's I've got all these things, right, that we're measuring. And Paul's like, hey, what if we just put all of it, in? What if we just put all of it in? Really what Paul is getting at is this idea right here. Hey, in view of God's mercy, in view of everything God has done for you, in view of the intensity of his sacrifice, motivated by the intensity of his love, in view of all that, in view of everything that's part of that, why don't you offer your whole body? Which is really Paul just saying, hey, what if we understand this? What if we understand that your entire life is actually spiritual? So what if we just push all the chips to the middle? What if we push the whole life to the middle because your whole life is spiritual? What if you just push your whole life to the middle of the table because your whole life is actually spiritual? What if we understood that we push all the chips in, your whole body, because all of it is spiritual? God didn't just redeem your spirit. Paul's trying to say he's also trying to heal your soul. He's also trying to heal your body. He's also got a purpose for your soul and for your body. He's also got an adventure for it to be lived. You don't have to hold something out over here to try and create your own adventure. If you push it all to the middle, God's got an adventure for you. Like there's something in it. Just push all the chips to the middle. Another way you could say it is like this. You surrender your whole life because your whole life is spiritual. All of life is spiritual, so surrender all of it. All of life is spiritual, so surrender all. Paul's saying, look, you don't have to like keep this and try and figure it out. You don't have to like keep over here the anxiety or the worry or the fear and like try and figure that out and pray for God from a spiritual corner to somehow influence. Just push it all to the middle. I know that you think this is really fun and it's a blast and it's great and everything else, but what if God could actually make it better? What if there was a better, God's as engaged in your future as you are. God's as engaged in your job as you are. In fact, God put you in there for a purpose. There's actually a meaning to it that's even so far beyond your job. It's crazy. Like, what if we just shoved it all to the middle? What if we shoved all of it? Every ounce of it. All of your life is spiritual. So why not push all of it to the middle? Let me help us understand something here. I know we think we have all the chips in front of us, all the parts of our life, all our relationships, all our finances, all of our dreams, all of our retirement plans, school plans, friendship plans, wedding plans. We got them all, right? I know we have them all. And I know it feels like Paul's kind of saying, hey, why don't you let this be normal? I know you're living in a life where you think like controlling the chips is normal and where you make decisions and then you ask for God's help because that's valuable. That's got meaning in it too, I guess, right? And so I know we think we control all the chips, like where are all the chips going to go, right? But part of what Paul's actually highlighting for us is what sounds like a hard truth, but it's actually a really freeing truth. Just let it soak in here for a second. You actually already don't control any of the chips. You don't actually control any of the chips. All of the chips are already surrendered to something. Listen, you function, I function, we function in one of two ways. We function in the way and the pattern of the world, which has already been created and established and we are living in, or we function in the way of God, which has already been established and created and we function in. It's okay. It's actually helpful and freeing for us to admit that, you know what, all these years I've thought I've controlled all the chips. Have you seen my financial plan? Have you seen the wedding I've been planning since the day I could read? Have you seen the college path I have chosen for my kid? Do you see my friend group? Do you see how well I'm living the American dream? Do you see how right my political party is? But it's actually so freeing just to pull back and say, I am actually already living one of these two ways. Paul's just highlighting that you actually get a choice. You and I were born living this way. You and I were born living, think, I'll control all the chips. The chips actually rely on me. Part of being a good citizen is that I make good decisions. Part of exercising my power and strength is that I control the decision. We're born into that. And everything around us, that's what's normal. Let's just level the playing field. You have not escaped this. I have not escaped this. We've been, everything in us has been taught to live this way. Paul's just actually telling us, look, you actually don't have to be a slave to that. You actually literally have a choice. You can actually choose to push all your chips to the middle. You actually have a choice to surrender all of your life is spiritual. which means all of your life actually is already surrendered. Paul's just helping us see we actually get to choose what it's surrendered to. More importantly, who it's surrendered to. That's what Paul's getting at. Paul's not trying to ruin anybody's dream. He's not trying to ruin anybody's future. He's not trying to ruin anybody's family or friend group. He's trying to fuel the adventure. He's trying to fuel the impact. And part of the question is today, friends, would you put all your chips in the middle? Would you push all your chips in the direction of God? Now I want you to just hold that chip for a second. Okay, you got a chip. Or at home, you got a coaster, a cup, whatever it is you're using, right? You got that chip, okay? And I want you to just let this represent all of your chips. This one chip is going to represent all your chips. And the question is, would you surrender it? Would you surrender just the relationships and those friends groups? Would you surrender your marriage? Would you surrender your addiction? Would you surrender the shame and embarrassment that's going with that right now? Would you surrender your job? Would you surrender your political opinion? Would you surrender your future? Your weekends, your ambitions, dreams, gifts, talents, hurts, aches, disappointments, losses, griefs? Would you just surrender all of those in view of his mercy? Just because you know he's merciful and kind and good and strong. And just because you know he came in part to free you from being a slave to something that is so normal, we often don't even know we're in it. What if we could redefine normal to say our whole lives were in with Jesus? The whole thing. I want to just give us an opportunity to make a decision with this. It's interesting. The vocabulary Paul uses here is about a moment of decision. It might be a moment that comes periodically in your life, but it is a moment of decision. It is a put a stake in the ground moment. And the only reason you do it is because you see it all in view of God's mercy and you understand that, what we see now is that Jesus really is worth it. He's really worth this kind of trust. He's really worth this kind of surrender. And so a part of our team's going to come and just help us create some space, and I want to walk you through a response. But before we do, I just need to be honest with you. We need to be honest with each other here for a minute. If you lay down your chip that represents all your chips, what you got to understand, it is not without cost. Full disclosure around the people Paul was writing to. And part of what he was writing about offering your life as a sacrifice. This is a group of people living in a foreign land trying to figure out how to follow Jesus. And some of them are Romans giving their lives to Jesus. And they're trying to figure out, how do I live in a Roman system under a Roman government and follow Jesus? And part of what they were being pressured to do, part of what the expectation was, is that when they went to the marketplace to sell their goods or to buy other goods, to get into the marketplace, you dropped some incense or you dropped a sacrifice on an altar to another god. You expressed your devotion to whatever god or combinations of gods Rome was approving at the time, which was really a mark of your devotion to Rome, to them and to their way. And that was normal. That's what everybody did. That's what people who are reading the letter had been doing, some of them. That's what they knew. And now Paul's coming along and he's saying, look, I know that there's a cost here, but look, in view of God's mercy and the cost he paid, in view of his worth, in view of his light, in view of his desire for your life, in the same way that he offered himself for you, would you do a new normal? Would you redefine normal in your life in a way that says, above my job, above my place in the marketplace, above my view of an American dream, above my view of a government or what it should be, above my view of where I think my kids need to go to school or college, or above my view of what kind of citizen I think I'm supposed to be, above my view of my finances, above my view even of how I think I'm supposed to function in a church, above my view of all of that, would I put my chips in the middle of the table and say, Jesus, my ultimate and full devotion is to you. My thrill of sacrifice is to you. You rescued me. Rome didn't rescue me. You marked my eternity. Rome doesn't. And we can change it for today. Jesus, you rescued me. This country didn't, the world didn't, the West didn't, the right education didn't. Jesus, you did. Jesus, you've got eternity. Nobody else does. All the things of the world today, they're going to fade. It's going away. It's just a mist. So we need to be honest with you. It's not the easiest decision in the world. And so what I fully understand and we all need to be okay with is that not all of us are going to put a chip in today. Some of you are going to weigh it out. You're going to consider it. Some of you are here today and you're not even sure what you want to do with Jesus yet. And the last thing that feels appealing to you today is to surrender your whole life to him. I get it. That's fine. Weigh it well. Some of you are here, you're joined online, and you've been waiting for a moment like this. You've wondered, what is it actually like to give my life to Jesus? It's just to give him everything, all of it. All the good, the bad, the junk, the promise, all of it. The sin, the good, all of it. Just put it all on the middle table and say, Jesus, here's my whole life. Just rescue it. Just lead it. And you can do that today. Some of us have been with Jesus a really long time, and it's just our day to come back to this thing of saying, man, this thing is so tricky. It's so subtle. I'm just living, controlling, or with more confidence or more weight on other things. I just want to get back here and say, man, Jesus, you got my whole life, all my feelings, all my possessions, all my things, all my thoughts. It's all yours. Wherever you're at, whatever your response is, you and Jesus just process that. It's just a decision for you and Jesus today. If you're in the room, I want to invite you to stand. Just hold your chip, but I want to invite you to stand. And we're going to very, very briefly sing just a portion of this song that we sang earlier. It really is a prayer. It's a statement. And I want to give you a chance to make a tangible move with it. If you just say, you know what, today, yeah, I'm in. I surrender everything. I'm offering, maybe for the first time, I'm offering again my whole life, I offer my whole body. That's my reasonable and logical act of worship. I want to invite you to come and just drop your chip on the stage. You just drop it up there. That's okay. I've been asked to drop my chips a lot of other places, God. I've been asked to control a lot of things, but today, just this chip represents my life. And then maybe for the first time, or maybe just for the 10th time or the 50th. Here, Jesus, my whole life belongs to you. The most reasonable, logical thing I'm going to do today is just give you my life. Just here, I offer myself. That's my worship. That's my worship. So Jesus, that's our aim today, is just to honor you. We'll all make the decision. We sense you leading and shaping in the moment. Thanks for the life of Scripture and the direction. Thank you that you actually want our whole life. There's nothing in it you don't want. There's nothing in it you're going to ask us to discard first. You want the whole thing. I thank you for your enthusiasm and how you'll respond to us today with the same way you've motivated us, with such love and joy and compassion and passion. So Jesus, we take this moment and we weigh this option of just putting a stake in the ground, throwing the chip of our life and saying, here we are, our whole life, our whole life, our whole life. I give it to you because you're worth it, because your mercy's beyond measure, and because I want to worship you. Church, the time is yours. For those of you joining at home, maybe just you make a firm statement of setting something down. Just put that down, whatever it was. And for those of you in the room, whenever you're ready, if you're ready, let's sing this and just come drop your chip.